Hey there, everybody in the FFBE Global Facebook group, and hello to everybody who sees this video on YouTube as well. Welcome to this week's Ask an Old Mog video, where we go over questions and answers in the Facebook Global group to try and answer questions in a visual format and try and help new players understand things about the game. Or just any player, it doesn't have to be a new player, just somebody who wants to learn a little bit more about the game. Today's question just posted live in the group because I approved it, and it has to do with chaining, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So let's get into it. This question came from just a moment ago. Honestly, it was just posted. I'm building a good overall bolting strike team. Any tips on who I can add for both arena and for missions? Okay, so bolting strike, chaining. This is good. Chaining obviously does a lot of really good things for you. The biggest impact that chaining has is it increases the amount of damage that you do. The meter on the screen says 300%, but with abilities and materia, you can increase the cap of that. And yeah, it's pretty complicated, but chaining is a big part of doing your damage, and being able to chain different units together and do that effectively is going to be a very important part of being able to clear trials and do damage in the arena and lots of things. And bolting strike is one of the easiest chaining families to use, and especially now in global is one of the most common chaining families that we get. So lots of units that exist in the game just simply come with their own bolting strike skills now, so for example. But I also want to point out that any magic that ends in Ra, so like Thunder Ra or Fire Ra or Blizzard Ra, was recently changed to be bolting strike chaining, making that a very viable way to let any unit be a support chainer by equipping them with an Esper, or just by buying the spell or crafting the spell and giving it to them. I did this recently in a video where I gave Roberta, who can't normally cast magic, Blizzard Ra using Shiva, or maybe it was Fenrir, I can't remember. It was one of those two, giving her Blizzard Ra and the Aranis ring to allow her to quad cast Blizzard Ra to chain with somebody else. Obviously it was less effective than using her normal skills, but it allowed me to be flexible with who she could chain with. So that's kind of cool. Bolting strike chaining becomes very accessible in that way. But there are definitely other chaining families you can use to your advantage that you can pick up from items and espers as well. Chaos Waved Awakened is another one. People call this one CWA. That's available through any spell that ends in Ga. So like Banish Ga or Fire Ga or Bio Ga. It ends in Ga, so it has CWA chaining frames, and that you can also pick up several CWA spells from items like the Arcana, which is a rod that's from really early on in the game, the Thunder Shield, the old Fire Whip that you could get from the Chamber of Arms. There's lots of ways to get Chaos Wave Awakened abilities on you from different items and espers as well, but it is a little harder to chain than bolting strike, and so take that with a grain of salt. But there's lots of ways to kind of build chaining into your team. Now I do want to answer your question though. So to answer that question, probably the best overall bolting strike chainers in the current meta right now are going to be units like Stormseeker Esther, Samurai Chizuru, Tidebringer Kaito, and Starlight Alina with her new intrinsic ability has a really strong bolting strike chaining move in her Gemini Blade. Also worth noting that Paladin Sylvie, as well as the original Sylvie, can also use skills that they have in their kit to give bolting strike chaining frames to any unit in the game. And original Sylvie's bolting strike chaining could actually also be triple cast, because it unlocked a move called like Bunny Kick or something like that. And then it also it gave you a move called Here We Go that allowed Bunny Kick to be cast 3 times. So you could give anybody triple cast bolting strike using those. So it's pretty cool. Some other notable mentions of this. Stormseeker Esther has a move that allows any unit in the party to use Extreme Nova chaining frames, which is very accessible for Stormseeker Esther, Samurai Chizuru, and Kaito as well. Another example of this is White Dragon Ling has a move that gives everybody in the party all at once Stardust Ray and Chaos Wave Awaken chaining. So that's a easy way to kind of build chaining into your party. The problem with that is a lot of these abilities don't do a ton of damage. They're really just there to help you support chain. What's nice about that is that in the arena, your damage is capped at 999 per turn per unit. So the amount of damage you do doesn't really matter that much, but the chaining is really becomes very important. But in the arena, you really probably don't always want to be doing single target moves, which is what a lot of these are. So you might be better off using a unit like Neo Visions, Kyros, and Ward, the Final Fantasy VIII unit. They have Bolting Strike chaining moves that are AoE and automatically tag chain, which means that they chain with themselves and they do, it's easier to chain because they're tag chaining. Some other units that do tag chaining, Roberta and Ignitos, who you see on the screen right there. Final Fantasy VII, Biggs, and Wedge do an AoE tag chain move from their basic attack, which is really cool. So yeah, really when it comes down to building a Bolting Strike chain team, I mean, there's just so many units that do it. But don't just nail yourself down to one chain frame. There's just so many different types of units that are out there. I understand why Bolting Strike is probably the one you're looking for, just because it is powerful and popular, and very easy to chain on most devices. But don't just stick to one. You got to be flexible. The good news is that there are lots of units that or lots of ways to get Bolting Strike chaining on your units if that's all you're looking for. But I would say those are probably the best ones that we have available. And yeah, there you go. So that's a pretty short video for this week. Chaining is just super, super important, and you had a question that was useful, so I thought we would talk about it very briefly, and we'll just leave it at that. So if you've got a question that you want to see in next week's video, let me know. I'm happy to try and go over things and try and answer it in a visual way. And it kind of depends. I'm guessing next week we might have some interesting stuff going on. If we get Clash of Wills next week, which we may not. It just the schedule kind of varies, but my assumption is that with Dark Visions ending, we'll probably get Clash of Wills. And we'll see what's coming up here in the next couple of days when the next news update appears. So that's cool. But if you have a question you want to see in the next video, let me know in the comments here or on YouTube, where the video is hosted, and I'll be happy to try and go over something. So yeah, that's it for right now. You guys be good to each other, take care, and we'll see you in the next video.